What if I told you that the most magnetically compelling people you've ever encountered never actually attempt to be compelling? They don't pursue attention, they don't perform for audiences, and they certainly don't follow the generic advice flooding social media about becoming more charismatic. Instead, they possess something considerably more powerful: silent attraction. While 99% of people are occupied trying to impress others through loud gestures, constant talking, and attention-seeking conduct, the top 1% grasp a fundamental truth about human psychology. Real attraction isn't about what you say or do to get noticed. It's about who you become when you believe nobody is observing. The most compelling people in any room aren't the ones commanding attention through force. They're the ones who naturally draw others in through their presence, their energy, and their deeply embedded habits that signal confidence, intelligence, and emotional maturity. These aren't tricks or techniques you activate and deactivate. They're integrated dimensions of who you are. In this comprehensive guide, you're going to uncover the scientifically supported habits that generate silent magnetism. You'll learn why striving intensely to be attractive actually pushes people away, and how cultivating the right internal systems creates an irresistible external presence. By the time you complete this, you'll understand precisely how to become the person others are naturally drawn to, without ever having to chase, perform, or compromise your authenticity. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about becoming the finest version of who you already are, and doing it so organically that attraction becomes inevitable. The psychology of silent magnetism. The biggest error most people make when attempting to become more attractive is concentrating on entirely the wrong things. They fixate over what to say, how to act, or what techniques to employ, completely overlooking the fundamental truth that attraction operates on a considerably deeper level than conscious behavior. Silent attraction functions because it reaches into the oldest, most primitive regions of the human brain. When we encounter someone who possesses genuine confidence, emotional stability, and social intelligence, our subconscious mind recognizes these as markers of genetic fitness, social standing, and potential partnership value. This recognition occurs in milliseconds, long before any words are exchanged. The neuroscience behind this is remarkable. Research from Harvard's Social, Cognitive, and Affective Neuroscience Lab demonstrates that our brains are perpetually scanning for social signals that indicate someone's value as a potential ally, leader, or partner. These assessments happen through mirror neurons that unconsciously mimic and evaluate the emotional states and behavioral patterns of others. When you encounter someone with silent magnetism, your brain registers hundreds of microsignals. Their posture communicates confidence without arrogance. Their breathing patterns suggest emotional regulation. Their eye contact demonstrates presence and attention. Their movement patterns indicate physical awareness and control. None of these require them to utter a single word, yet they generate an immediate impression of attractiveness. This is why the most charismatic leaders, accomplished entrepreneurs, and naturally attractive people often appear effortless in their appeal. They're not performing attraction, they're embodying it. Their habits, mindset, and internal state create an external presence that others find magnetic. The research of Dr. Albert Mehrabian revealed that only 7% of communication impact derives from words, while 38% originates from vocal qualities and 55% from body language and presence. This means that 93% of your attractiveness has nothing to do with what you say and everything to do with how you carry yourself and the energy you project. But here's where most people go wrong. They attempt to imitate these signals through surface-level modifications. They force better posture, rehearse scripted conversations, or adopt behaviors that don't align with their internal state. This creates incongruence, and humans are exceptionally skilled at detecting incongruence. When your external expression doesn't match your internal reality, people sense something is off, even if they can't articulate precisely why. Silent attraction operates because it's authentic. It emerges from genuine self-development, real confidence, and actual competence. You can't fabricate the calm presence of someone who has learned to regulate their emotions. You can't imitate the natural confidence of someone who has constructed real skills and overcome genuine challenges. You can't replicate the social ease of someone who genuinely cares about others and has cultivated emotional intelligence. This is why the habits we're going to explore aren't merely behaviors to adopt. They're transformative practices that alter who you are at a fundamental level. When you develop these habits consistently, they rewire your nervous system, reshape your identity, and transform your presence in ways that generate genuine magnetism. The individuals who possess silent attraction have typically spent years, often unconsciously, cultivating habits that signal high value to others. They've learned to be comfortable with themselves, to regulate their emotions under pressure, to demonstrate genuine interest in others, and to navigate the world with purpose and presence. These aren't personality traits they were born possessing. They're skills developed through consistent practice. Understanding this distinction is crucial because it means silent attraction is learnable. You don't need to be naturally extroverted, exceptionally good-looking, or blessed with charisma. You need to develop the internal qualities that create external magnetism. You need to build the habits that signal confidence, competence, and emotional maturity to everyone you encounter. The transformation happens from the inside out. As you develop these habits, they become part of your identity. You stop thinking about being attractive and start simply being attractive. You stop performing for others and start operating from a place of genuine confidence and self-assurance. This internal shift creates an external presence that others find irresistibly magnetic. Before we examine specific attractive habits, you need to understand the foundation that makes everything else achievable: your presence and energy management. This is the invisible force that determines whether people are drawn to you or unconsciously avoid you, regardless of what you say or do. Presence is not about being the loudest individual in the room or demanding attention. True presence is about being fully engaged with the current moment and the people within it. It's about having such complete awareness and control over your internal state that others can feel your groundedness and stability. The neuroscience of presence reveals why this quality is so magnetically compelling. When you're truly present, your nervous system is regulated. Your breathing is deep and controlled, and your body language naturally opens up. This generates what researchers call psychological safety for others. People unconsciously relax around those who are genuinely present because they sense no threat, no agenda, and no emotional instability. Most people exist in a state of partial presence. They're physically in one location, while mentally somewhere entirely different. They're contemplating what occurred earlier, worrying about what might happen later, or planning what they'll say next in the conversation. This scattered attention creates an energy that others find draining rather than attractive. Developing true presence begins with learning to manage your internal energy. Your energy is the sum total of your thoughts, emotions, physical state, and attention. When these elements are aligned and controlled, you project an energy that others find compelling. When they're scattered or conflicted, you project an energy that repels others, even if you're articulating all the right things. The first component of energy management is emotional regulation. Attractive people have learned to maintain emotional equilibrium regardless of external circumstances. They don't become triggered by minor inconveniences, don't react emotionally to criticism, and don't permit other people's moods to dictate their own emotional state. This emotional stability is incredibly attractive because it signals psychological maturity and reliability. When others understand that you won't become reactive, defensive, or emotionally volatile, they feel secure enough to be authentic around you. They can express themselves without navigating on eggshells, knowing that you'll respond from a place of emotional intelligence rather than knee-jerk reaction. Developing emotional regulation requires understanding the physiology of emotions. Emotions are not merely mental experiences, they're full-body phenomena that affect your breathing, posture, facial expressions, and vocal tonality. Learning to recognize the early physical signs of emotional activation allows you to intervene before your emotions seize control of your behavior. The practice of conscious breathing is fundamental to emotional regulation. When you breathe deeply and slowly, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which promotes calm and clear thinking. When you breathe shallowly or rapidly, you activate your sympathetic nervous system, which generates stress and reactive behavior. Attractive people have often unconsciously cultivated breathing patterns that maintain them in a state of calm alertness. They breathe from their diaphragm rather than their chest. They maintain a slow and steady rhythm, and they employ their breath to reset their emotional state when required. This creates a physical foundation for emotional stability that others can sense even from across a room. The second component of energy management is attention control. Where you direct your attention determines the quality of your presence and the impact you have on others. When your attention is scattered across multiple concerns, your presence becomes diluted and unfocused. When your attention is completely engaged with the person or situation before you, your presence becomes magnetic. Developing attention control requires training yourself to be single-pointed in your focus. This means when you're in a conversation, you're 100% present with that conversation. You're not contemplating your phone, planning your next activity, or evaluating what the other person is saying. You're fully engaged with understanding, connecting, and responding authentically. This level of attention is rare in our distracted world, which makes it incredibly powerful when someone encounters it. People are so accustomed to partial attention that when they experience someone's complete presence, it feels almost intoxicating. They leave the interaction feeling heard, valued, and energized. The third component of energy management is physical awareness. Your body is perpetually communicating information about your internal state, and others are unconsciously reading these signals. When your body is tense, contracted, or fidgety, it communicates anxiety and insecurity. When your body is relaxed, open, and grounded, it communicates confidence and ease. Developing physical awareness means learning to consciously release unnecessary tension while maintaining alertness and engagement. It means becoming aware of your posture, your facial expressions, and your movement patterns. It means understanding how your physical state influences your mental and emotional state, and vice versa. Many people carry chronic tension in their shoulders, jaw, stomach, without recognizing it. This tension not only affects how they feel internally, but also creates an energy that others find uncomfortable. Learning to consciously release this tension while maintaining good posture and alert engagement creates a physical presence that others find appealing and calming. The integration of emotional regulation, attention control, and physical awareness creates what we might call grounded presence. This is the quality that makes someone's energy feel solid, stable, and attractive. It's not about being perfect or never experiencing difficult emotions. It's about having the skills to navigate your internal world in a way that allows you to show up authentically and powerfully in your external world. When you develop grounded presence, several things occur automatically. Your voice becomes more resonant and calm. Your eye contact becomes more steady and genuine. Your movement becomes more fluid and purposeful. Your listening becomes more attentive and empathetic. These changes happen naturally as expressions of your improved internal state, not as behaviors you're attempting to perform. This is the foundation upon which all other attractive habits are constructed. Without grounded presence, even the most sophisticated social skills can feel manipulative or inauthentic. With grounded presence, even simple interactions become opportunities for genuine connection and mutual attraction. Now, pause here and ask yourself honestly, on a scale of 1 to 10, how present are you in your daily interactions? Most people, if they're being genuinely honest, will land somewhere between 4 and 6. If you want to leave this listening experience different from how you arrived, here's what the Elite Success Audiobooks community invites you to do. Drop the number 111 in the comments right now. In the quantum field, 111 is recognized as a powerful signal of alignment, of thoughts and energy beginning to synchronize with intention. If you felt something shift while listening to this section, if something clicked about presence or energy, that number is your marker. It tells the universe and this community that you're choosing awareness. Leave 111 below and let others witness your decision to become more present. In a world where everyone is competing to be heard, the person who has mastered strategic silence and deep listening stands out like a beacon. This isn't about being quiet or passive. It's about understanding that silence and listening are active, powerful instruments that create profound attraction and influence. The psychology behind strategic silence is rooted in several key principles. First, silence creates space for others to reveal themselves. When you're comfortable with pauses and quiet moments, you give people permission to think, process, and share more deeply than they would in rapid-fire conversation. This creates intimacy and connection that most people rarely encounter. Second, silence demonstrates confidence and self-control. People who feel compelled to fill every moment with words are often operating from anxiety or insecurity. They're concerned that silence means they're boring, that they're not contributing adequately, or that others will judge them negatively. Someone who is comfortable with silence projects the confidence that they don't need to prove themselves through constant verbal performance. Third, strategic silence makes your words more impactful when you do speak. If you're perpetually talking, your words lose their weight and significance. If you speak thoughtfully, and only when you have something valuable to contribute, people listen more intently and value your input more substantially. The neuroscience of listening reveals why deep listening is one of the most attractive qualities a person can possess. When someone feels truly heard and understood, their brain releases oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. This generates feelings of trust, connection, and positive association with the person who provided that experience. Most people are poor listeners, not because they don't care, but because they've never learned how to listen properly. They listen to respond rather than to understand. They're formulating their next comment while the other person is still speaking. They're filtering what they hear through their own experiences and judgments, rather than attempting to understand the speaker's perspective. Deep listening is an active, engaged process that requires significant mental and emotional energy. It involves several key components that, when mastered, create profound attraction and connection. The first component is present moment awareness. Deep listening requires you to be completely focused on the person speaking and what they're communicating, both verbally and non-verbally. This means setting aside distractions, making eye contact, and using your full attention to understand not just their words, but their emotions, intentions, and underlying needs. The second component is emotional attunement. This involves listening not just to the content of what someone is saying, but to the emotional subtext. Are they excited, anxious, sad, frustrated, hopeful? Often, the emotion behind the words is more significant than the words themselves. When you can recognize and acknowledge someone's emotional state, they feel seen and validated in a way that creates deep connection. The third component is curiosity without judgment. Deep listening requires approaching others with genuine curiosity about their perspective, experiences, and thoughts. This means suspending your own judgments, opinions, and need to be right, and instead focusing on understanding how the world appears through their eyes. This level of curiosity is rare and incredibly attractive because it makes people feel valued and interesting. Most conversations involve people waiting for their turn to share their own thoughts and experiences. When someone encounters a person who is genuinely curious about them, it creates a powerful experience of being seen and appreciated for who they truly are. The fourth component is reflective feedback. This involves occasionally mirroring back what you've heard to ensure understanding and to demonstrate that you're actively engaged in the conversation. This might sound like, "It sounds like you're feeling frustrated because," or, "If I understand correctly, you're saying that." This technique not only ensures clear communication, but also makes the speaker feel heard and understood. Strategic silence operates in conjunction with deep listening to create what researchers call conversational leadership. This is the ability to guide conversations not through domination or excessive talking, but through thoughtful questions, strategic pauses, and creating space for others to explore their thoughts and feelings. People who have mastered conversational leadership understand that the person who asks the finest questions often steers the direction and depth of the conversation. They recognize that a well-timed pause can be more powerful than any words. They understand that making others feel heard and understood is one of the most attractive things you can do. The practice of strategic silence also involves knowing when not to offer advice or attempt to resolve someone's problems. Many people, particularly those who are naturally helpful, make the error of immediately jumping to solutions when someone shares a challenge or concern. However, most of the time, people don't want solutions. They want to be heard and understood. Learning to remain with someone's discomfort without immediately attempting to fix it is a profound skill that creates deep trust and connection. It demonstrates emotional maturity and respect for the other person's autonomy. It shows that you trust them to discover their own solutions and that you value the process of being heard over the outcome of solving problems. The magnetic quality of deep listening extends beyond individual conversations to how you're perceived in group settings. In meetings, social gatherings, or any group dynamic, the person who listens well and speaks thoughtfully often emerges as a natural leader, even if they contribute relatively few words. This happens because deep listeners often have the most insightful contributions when they do. Social intelligence is the ability to navigate complex social situations with awareness, skill, and authenticity. It's not about manipulation or engaging in social games. It's about understanding the subtle dynamics of human interaction and responding in ways that create connection, trust, and mutual respect. This quality is incredibly attractive because it signals emotional maturity, empathy, and the ability to generate positive experiences for others. The foundation of social intelligence is emotional awareness, both of yourself and others. Most people move through social interactions with only surface-level awareness of the emotional undercurrents that are constantly flowing between people. They miss the subtle signs that someone is uncomfortable, the nonverbal cues that indicate interest or disinterest, and the emotional needs that lie beneath surface-level conversation. Developing emotional awareness begins with learning to read the emotional subtext of social interactions. Every conversation, every gathering, every social event has multiple layers of communication occurring simultaneously. There's the surface level, what people are expressing with their words. There's the emotional level, what people are feeling and how those feelings are shaping their communication. And there's the relational level, how people are positioning themselves in relation to each other and what social dynamics are operating. People with high social intelligence have learned to perceive and navigate all these levels simultaneously. They can engage in surface-level conversation while remaining aware of emotional undercurrents and relational dynamics. This allows them to respond not just to what's being said, but to what's genuinely happening in the interaction. The first component of emotional awareness is recognizing emotional states in others. This requires learning to read facial expressions, body language, vocal tonality, and energy levels. Most people focus primarily on words, but research demonstrates that the majority of emotional communication happens through nonverbal channels. Learning to read emotional states involves paying attention to micro-expressions, brief, involuntary facial expressions that reveal genuine emotions. It involves noticing body language patterns that indicate comfort or discomfort, engagement or withdrawal, openness or defensiveness. It involves listening to vocal qualities like pace, tone, and volume that convey emotional information beyond the content of words. This skill develops through conscious practice and attention. Begin by observing people in various settings and attempting to identify their emotional states based on nonverbal cues. Watch how people's faces, postures, and energy levels shift throughout conversations. Notice the distinction between genuine and forced smiles, between authentic enthusiasm and polite interest, between comfortable silence and awkward tension. The second component of emotional awareness is understanding your own emotional impact on others. Most people are largely unconscious of the emotional effect they have in social situations. They don't realize that their anxiety makes others uncomfortable, that their excitement is overwhelming for some personality types, or that their intensity intimidates people who prefer gentler interaction styles. Developing awareness of your emotional impact requires honest self-reflection and feedback from others. It means paying attention to how people respond to your presence and communication style. Do people seem to relax or tense up around you? Do they open up or become more guarded? Do they seek out your company or seem to avoid deeper interactions? This awareness allows you to adjust your approach based on the situation and the people involved. The third component of social intelligence is understanding group dynamics and social hierarchies. Every group, whether it's a family, workplace team, or social gathering, has implicit power, structures, alliances, and communication patterns. People with high social intelligence can quickly assess these dynamics and navigate them skillfully. This involves recognizing who has formal and informal influence, understanding the unspoken rules and expectations of different social contexts, and knowing how to contribute to group interactions in ways that are valued and appreciated. It means understanding when to lead and when to follow, when to speak up and when to remain quiet, when to challenge and when to support. Social intelligence also involves what psychologists call cognitive empathy, the ability to understand and predict how others think and feel without necessarily experiencing the same emotions yourself. This is different from emotional empathy, which involves actually feeling what others feel. Cognitive empathy allows you to understand and respond to others' perspectives without becoming emotionally overwhelmed or losing your own center. This skill is particularly valuable in conflict resolution, negotiation, and leadership situations. When you can understand how others perceive a situation, what their concerns and motivations are, and what they need to feel satisfied, you can discover solutions that work for everyone involved. The development of social intelligence also requires understanding and respecting different communication styles and personality types. Some people are direct and appreciate straightforward communication. Others are more sensitive and need gentler, more diplomatic approaches. Some people process information quickly and prefer rapid-fire exchanges. Others need time to think and prefer slower, more reflective conversations. Highly socially intelligent people have learned to recognize these distinctions and adapt their communication style accordingly. They don't attempt to force everyone into their preferred way of interacting. Instead, they meet people where they are and communicate in ways that feel comfortable and natural for the other person. This adaptability is not about being artificial or manipulative. It's about recognizing that effective communication requires flexibility, and that demonstrating respect for others' preferences is a form of kindness and emotional intelligence. Another crucial aspect of social intelligence is knowing how to handle social mistakes and awkward moments gracefully. Everyone says the wrong thing sometimes, misreads social cues, or finds themselves in uncomfortable situations. People with high social intelligence have learned to navigate these moments with humor, honesty, and grace, rather than defensiveness or embarrassment. This might involve acknowledging a misunderstanding directly, using appropriate humor to diffuse tension, or simply moving past awkward moments without amplifying them beyond what they need to be. The ability to handle social imperfection with confidence and ease is deeply attractive because it signals emotional maturity and resilience. Social intelligence also includes understanding the importance of social reciprocity and contribution. Attractive people understand that positive relationships require mutual benefit and contribution. They look for ways to add value to others' lives, whether through emotional support, practical assistance, interesting conversation, or simply positive energy. Now, here's an invitation from Elite Success Audiobooks. If what you've been hearing about social intelligence is landing differently than most content you've encountered, if it feels less like tactics and more like truth, drop 520 in the comments. In the language of quantum resonance, 520 carries the frequency of the heart field opening, of moving from transactional thinking into genuine connection. If this section has started shifting how you see your interactions, let that number speak for you. Leave 520 below. Your body is perpetually communicating information about your internal state, confidence level, and social value. Every movement you make, every gesture you employ, and every position you hold sends signals that others unconsciously interpret and respond to. Most people are completely unaware of these signals, moving through the world with unconscious patterns that often undermine their attractiveness and social impact. The science of embodied cognition reveals that your physical posture and movement patterns don't just reflect your mental state, they actually influence and create your mental state. When you adopt confident postures and purposeful movement patterns, you don't just appear more attractive, you actually become more confident, alert, and emotionally regulated. This creates a positive feedback loop where improved physical presence enhances mental state, which further improves physical presence. Purposeful movement is characterized by several key qualities that distinguish it from the unconscious movement patterns most people exhibit. First is intentionality. Every movement serves a purpose and is executed with awareness rather than happening automatically or nervously. Second is fluidity. Movements flow smoothly from one to another without jerky, abrupt, or hesitant transitions. Third is groundedness. Movements originate from a stable, centered base, rather than from tension or imbalance. The foundation of attractive physical presence is what martial artists and dancers call centering. This involves maintaining awareness of your physical center of gravity, typically situated just below your navel, and moving from this stable base rather than from peripheral tension or imbalance. When you move from your center, your movements naturally become more fluid, purposeful, and graceful. Most people carry chronic tension in their shoulders, neck, or jaw, which creates movement patterns that appear anxious, rushed, or uncomfortable. Learning to consciously release unnecessary tension while maintaining good posture and alert engagement is fundamental to attractive physical presence. Eye contact is perhaps the most powerful dimension of physical presence, yet most people utilize it poorly. Effective eye contact is not about staring intensely or maintaining constant visual contact. It's about making genuine, comfortable contact that demonstrates presence and interest without generating pressure or discomfort. The key is to make eye contact when listening, break it naturally when speaking or thinking, and return to it in a rhythm that feels organic and unforced. The quality of your eye contact should match the context and relationship. With close friends and intimate partners, longer periods of eye contact feel natural and connecting. With new acquaintances or in professional settings, briefer but genuine eye contact demonstrates respect and attention without creating intimacy pressure. Learning to calibrate your eye contact appropriately is a crucial social skill. Hand gestures and arm positioning also significantly impact how others perceive your confidence and attractiveness. Open gestures, where your palms are visible and your arms are uncrossed, signal openness and honesty. Closed gestures, where your arms are crossed or your hands are concealed, can signal defensiveness or discomfort. However, the key is authenticity rather than forcing open positions that don't feel natural. Walking patterns reveal enormous amounts of information about confidence and internal state. Confident walking is characterized by a steady pace, upright posture, and smooth gait. The head is held high, the shoulders are back but not rigid, and the stride is neither rushed nor hesitant. The pace is determined by purpose rather than anxiety or self-consciousness. Many people walk too quickly because they're anxious or attempting to appear busy and important. Others walk too slowly because they're uncertain or trying to evade attention. Attractive walking finds the middle ground, moving with purpose and confidence at a pace that feels natural and unhurried. Sitting posture is equally important, particularly in social and professional settings where you may be seated for extended periods. Attractive sitting involves maintaining an upright but relaxed posture, keeping your feet grounded and positioning your body in a way that demonstrates engagement with the environment and people around you. Voice and speaking patterns are technically part of physical presence, since voice is generated by the physical mechanisms of breathing, posture, and muscle tension. Attractive vocal presence is characterized by speaking from a relaxed, grounded position rather than from tension or anxiety. This typically results in a slightly deeper, more resonant voice that carries well without being loud or forced. The pace of speech is also crucial. Many people speak too quickly when nervous or too slowly when uncertain. Attractive speech finds a moderate pace that allows for clear articulation and gives listeners time to process information. True confidence cannot be fabricated, performed, or adopted as a surface-level behavior. Authentic confidence emerges from competence, self-knowledge, and the accumulated evidence of your ability to handle challenges, learn from setbacks, and achieve meaningful goals. This inner confidence is far more attractive than any external display of bravado because it's genuine, stable, and grounded in reality rather than insecurity or wishful thinking. The psychology of confidence reveals that it's not a fixed personality trait, but a dynamic state that emerges from the interaction between your capabilities, your self-perception, and your track record of success in handling life's challenges. People with genuine confidence have typically invested significant time and effort in developing real skills, knowledge, and emotional resilience that give them legitimate reasons to feel capable and self-assured. The foundation of unshakable confidence is competence development. This means becoming genuinely skilled at things that matter to you and that create value in the world. Whether it's professional skills, creative abilities, physical fitness, emotional intelligence, or problem-solving capabilities, developing real competence gives you something solid to feel confident about. Many people attempt to build confidence through positive thinking or affirmations, but this approach often fails because it's not grounded in reality. Your subconscious mind knows the difference between genuine capability and wishful thinking. Real confidence develops when your self-perception aligns with actual evidence of your abilities and achievements. The process of building competence requires embracing what psychologists call productive discomfort. This means regularly challenging yourself with tasks and goals that stretch your current abilities without overwhelming you completely. It means seeking out learning opportunities that require effort, persistence, and the willingness to make mistakes while improving. This is why confident people often have a history of pursuing challenging goals and persisting through difficulties. They've accumulated evidence that they can learn new things, overcome obstacles, and achieve objectives that initially seemed difficult or impossible. Self-knowledge is another crucial component of inner confidence. This involves understanding your strengths and weaknesses, your values and priorities, and your natural patterns of thinking and behaving. When you know yourself thoroughly, you're less likely to be thrown off balance by criticism, setbacks, or unexpected challenges because you have a stable sense of who you are and what you're capable of. Developing self-knowledge requires honest self-reflection, seeking feedback from others, and paying attention to your patterns of success and struggle across different areas of life. It means being willing to acknowledge both your capabilities and your limitations without defensiveness or harsh self-judgment. Confident people typically have a realistic but positive relationship with their limitations. They don't pretend to be skilled at everything or attempt to conceal their weaknesses. Instead, they acknowledge their limitations while directing their energy toward developing their strengths and working around or improving their weaker areas when necessary. Inner confidence also requires developing what researchers call emotional resilience, the ability to recover from setbacks, disappointments, and failures without losing your sense of self-worth or capability. This doesn't mean never feeling hurt, disappointed, or discouraged. It means having the internal resources to process these experiences and extract learning and growth from them. Emotional resilience develops through experience with adversity and the conscious development of coping strategies and support systems. Every time you face a challenge and find a way to handle it, you build evidence of your resilience and capability. Every time you encounter a setback and recover from it, you develop confidence in your ability to handle future difficulties. The way you interpret and respond to failure significantly impacts your confidence development. People with growing confidence typically view failures as learning opportunities, rather than evidence of inadequacy. They extract lessons from setbacks, adjust their approach, and continue working toward their goals, rather than surrendering or seeing failure as confirmation of their limitations. This growth mindset, as researcher Carol Dweck calls it, is fundamental to building lasting confidence. It means viewing abilities as developable rather than fixed, seeing challenges as opportunities to grow rather than threats to your self-image, and understanding that effort and persistence are pathways to mastery. Building inner confidence also requires taking calculated risks and stepping outside your comfort zone regularly. Confidence grows through expanding your sense of what's possible and what you can handle. This means saying yes to opportunities that stretch you, taking on challenges that require you to develop new skills, and positioning yourself in situations where you might fail, but will definitely learn. Social confidence, a specific dimension of inner confidence, develops through positive social experiences and the cultivation of genuine social skills. This means learning to communicate effectively, developing empathy and emotional intelligence, and building the ability to connect authentically with different types of people in various contexts. Many people struggle with social confidence because they focus on attempting to impress others rather than developing the skills to connect genuinely and contribute positively to social interactions. Real social confidence comes from knowing that you can add value to others' lives, that you can handle social challenges gracefully, and that you can be authentically yourself in social situations. The vast majority of human communication occurs below the level of conscious awareness through micro-expressions, body language, vocal tonality, and energy patterns that our brains process instantaneously, but rarely analyze explicitly. People with magnetic attraction have typically developed, often unconsciously, the ability to communicate powerfully through these nonverbal channels while remaining sensitive to the nonverbal communications of others. The science of nonverbal communication reveals that humans are constantly transmitting and receiving emotional and social information through channels that operate faster than conscious thought. Within milliseconds of encountering someone, your brain has assessed their emotional state, confidence level, social status, and potential threat or attraction level based primarily on nonverbal cues. This means that your nonverbal communication is perpetually shaping how others perceive and respond to you, regardless of what you're expressing with words. People who understand and master these subtle communication channels have an enormous advantage in creating attraction, influence, and connection, because they're communicating effectively on the channels that have the greatest impact. The foundation of powerful nonverbal communication is congruence between your internal state and external expression. When your thoughts, emotions, and intentions are aligned and authentic, your nonverbal communication naturally becomes more powerful and attractive. When there's incongruence between what you're thinking and feeling internally and what you're expressing externally, people sense something is off, even if they can't articulate what it is. This is why working on your internal state is so crucial for developing attractive nonverbal communication. You can't fabricate the micro-expressions, energy patterns, and subtle cues that emerge from genuine confidence, emotional stability, and authentic interest in others. These qualities must be developed genuinely to be communicated authentically. Facial expressions are one of the most powerful forms of nonverbal communication. Yet, most people are largely unconscious of what their face is communicating. Research has identified dozens of distinct facial expressions that convey specific emotions and social information. Learning to recognize these expressions in others and become more conscious of your own facial communication can dramatically improve your social effectiveness. The most important facial communication skills involve eye contact patterns, genuine versus forced smiling, and overall facial relaxation. Genuine eye contact involves looking at someone when they're speaking to demonstrate attention and respect, making contact when you're speaking to emphasize important points, and breaking contact naturally to avoid creating intensity or pressure. A genuine smile involves not just the mouth, but the entire face, particularly the eyes. Artificial smiles are easily detected because they don't engage the muscles around the eyes that create the slight squinting and lines that accompany authentic, positive emotion. Vocal tonality carries enormous amounts of emotional and social information. The pace, pitch, volume, and resonance of your voice communicate confidence, emotional state, and social positioning more powerfully than the words you're speaking. Most people are unconscious of their vocal patterns and how they affect others' perceptions and responses. Attractive vocal communication is typically characterized by speaking from a relaxed, grounded position in your body, rather than from tension or anxiety. This usually results in a slightly deeper, more resonant voice that carries well without being loud or forced. The pace is moderate, allowing for clear articulation and giving listeners time to process information. Vocal confidence also involves being comfortable with pauses and silence, rather than filling every moment with sound. Strategic. Pauses can emphasize important points, give others time to respond, and demonstrate that you're not anxious about maintaining constant verbal output. Posture and body positioning communicate social status, confidence, and emotional state more rapidly than any other form of nonverbal communication. Open, upright postures generally signal confidence and approachability, while closed, collapsed postures tend to signal insecurity or defensiveness. Energy and presence are perhaps the most subtle but powerful forms of nonverbal communication. Your overall energy level, emotional state, and quality of attention create an invisible but palpable influence on everyone around you. People can sense whether you're genuinely present and engaged, or distracted and disconnected, whether you're calm and centered, or anxious and scattered. Developing attractive energy and presence requires working on your internal state through practices like meditation, physical exercise, emotional regulation techniques, and stress management. When your internal state is calm, confident, and genuinely interested in others, this naturally expresses itself in your energy and presence, without any need for performance or technique. Subtle influence through nonverbal communication involves understanding how your presence affects others and learning to create positive experiences for the people around you. This doesn't mean manipulation or attempting to control others' responses. It means becoming skilled at creating environments where others feel comfortable, valued, and appreciated. Reading others' nonverbal communication is equally important for developing social intelligence and attraction. Learning to recognize signs of comfort and discomfort, interest and boredom, agreement and disagreement, allows you to adjust your approach and respond more effectively to others' needs and preferences. The ability to form deep, meaningful connections with others while maintaining your own center and independence is perhaps the most attractive quality a person can possess. This skill allows you to engage authentically and openly with others, without the energy-draining neediness or desperate attachment that repels people and prevents genuine intimacy from developing. The psychology of neediness reveals why it's so destructive to attraction and connection. When you approach relationships from a place of need or desperation, you're essentially communicating that you don't have adequate internal resources to feel complete or secure on your own. This creates pressure for the other person to fill your emotional needs, which most people find overwhelming and unattractive. Neediness also distorts your ability to see and respond to others clearly, because you're filtering everything through the lens of your own unmet needs. The foundation of creating meaningful connections without neediness is developing what psychologists call secure attachment and emotional independence. This doesn't mean being emotionally unavailable or refusing to depend on others in healthy ways. It means having enough internal stability and self-worth that you can engage in relationships from a place of choice rather than desperation. Emotional independence develops through building a solid relationship with yourself, developing internal resources for emotional regulation and self-soothing, and creating a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling, independent of romantic or social relationships. When your sense of worth and security comes primarily from internal sources, you can engage with others from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. This internal abundance allows you to approach relationships with what researchers call generous curiosity. Instead of being primarily focused on what you can extract from interactions, you become genuinely interested in understanding, appreciating, and supporting others. The practice of generous curiosity involves approaching others with genuine interest in their well-being, their thoughts and experiences, and their growth and happiness. It means asking questions because you truly want to understand, rather than because you're attempting to create a favorable impression. It means offering support and encouragement because you genuinely care, rather than because you're hoping for something in return. This doesn't mean becoming a people pleaser or sacrificing your own needs and boundaries. Healthy connection requires maintaining your own center while being genuinely responsive to others. Creating meaningful connections also requires developing what attachment researchers call differentiation, the ability to remain yourself while in close relationship with others. Many people lose themselves in relationships, adopting the interests, opinions, and preferences of others in an attempt to maintain connection and approval. This loss of self actually undermines, rather than enhances, connection, because it eliminates the very uniqueness and authenticity that made you attractive initially. The ability to create meaningful connections also requires developing comfort with vulnerability and emotional intimacy. Many people keep relationships at surface levels because they're afraid of being truly seen and potentially rejected. However, real connection requires the willingness to share your authentic thoughts, feelings, and experiences, even when they're not perfectly polished or impressive. Healthy vulnerability is different from emotional dumping or oversharing. It involves sharing appropriate levels of authenticity based on the depth of relationship and the other person's capacity to receive and respond supportively. The development of meaningful connection skills also involves learning to handle conflict and disagreement constructively, rather than avoiding it or allowing it to destroy relationships. Many people are so fearful of conflict that they either avoid expressing their needs and preferences or become aggressive when differences surface. Healthy relationship skills include the ability to express disagreement respectfully, to listen to others' perspectives without becoming defensive, and to collaborate in finding solutions that honor both people's needs and preferences. Before we move forward, Elite Success Audiobooks wants to connect with you on something real. If the idea of connecting from abundance rather than from need, of giving without keeping score, of being present without agenda, if that distinction has hit you somewhere meaningful today, leave 888 in the comments. In quantum numerology, 888 represents infinite flow, the number of abundance cycles completing and beginning again. 8 is the number of infinity turned upright. 3 of them together signal that you're entering a new phase of energetic circulation. If you're ready to move from scarcity-based connection to abundance-based attraction, 888 is your declaration. Drop it below and let this community stand with you. The ability to quickly assess and skillfully navigate complex social dynamics is one of the most sophisticated forms of social intelligence. And it's incredibly attractive because it demonstrates emotional maturity, awareness, and the ability to create positive experiences for everyone involved. Most people are largely unconscious of the invisible social currents that flow through every group interaction, missing crucial information that could help them connect more effectively and contribute more positively. Every social group, whether it's a family gathering, workplace meeting, or gathering with friends, has multiple layers of dynamics operating simultaneously. There are formal hierarchies and informal power structures, existing relationships and tensions, unspoken rules and expectations, and individual personalities with different needs and communication styles. People who can perceive and navigate these dynamics skillfully become natural leaders and sought-after companions. The foundation of reading social dynamics is developing what researchers call social situational awareness. This involves stepping back from your own concerns and anxieties to observe the broader patterns of interaction, the emotional undercurrents, and the needs and motivations of different individuals within the group context. Most people enter social situations focused primarily on their own performance, worrying about how they're being perceived, what they should say next, or whether they're fitting in appropriately. This self-focused attention prevents them from seeing the rich complexity of social information that's constantly available. Shifting to social situational awareness means asking different questions. What's the overall energy and mood of this group? Who are the formal and informal leaders? What are the unspoken tensions or alliances? Who seems comfortable and who seems out of place? What does this particular group value and appreciate? The skill of reading power dynamics is particularly important for navigating complex social situations effectively. Every group has both formal authority structures and informal influence patterns. Understanding who has what kind of power and how they utilize it allows you to position yourself appropriately and contribute in ways that are valued and appreciated. Formal power is usually obvious through titles, roles, or explicit authority. Informal power is more subtle and emerges through things like expertise, charisma, social connections, or the ability to influence group decisions and directions. Often the people with the most informal power are not the ones with the highest formal titles. Learning to recognize informal power requires paying attention to who others look to for opinions, whose suggestions get implemented, who can alter the mood or direction of conversations, and who seems to have the most social capital within the group. The ability to read emotional undercurrents is equally important for social navigation. Groups always have emotional dynamics that are separate from the explicit content of conversations. There might be excitement, tension, boredom, anxiety, competition, or affection flowing between different members. And these emotions significantly affect how interactions unfold. Understanding group roles and dynamics also helps you navigate complex interactions more skillfully. Different people naturally settle into different roles within groups. The leader, the supporter, the challenger, the peacemaker, the entertainer, the observer. Recognizing these patterns helps you understand how you can contribute most effectively and how to work with, rather than against, the natural group dynamics. Sometimes, the most valuable contribution you can make is stepping into a role that's absent, or supporting someone who's already filling an important role effectively. The ability to diffuse tension and redirect negative dynamics is one of the most valuable social skills you can cultivate. Groups inevitably experience moments of conflict, misunderstanding, or negative emotion. And someone who can skillfully address these situations without amplifying them is incredibly valuable and attractive. Tension diffusion might involve acknowledging different perspectives without taking sides, introducing humor appropriately to lighten the mood, redirecting conversation toward common ground, or simply modeling the calm, respectful energy that you want to see in the group. One of the most common mistakes people make when developing attractiveness is treating it as a destination rather than a journey. They work on building confidence, improving their social skills, or developing their presence until they reach a certain level, and then they stop growing and start coasting. This approach inevitably leads to stagnation and decline because attractiveness, like physical fitness, requires ongoing maintenance and continuous development. The people who remain consistently attractive throughout their lives understand that personal development is not a project to be completed, but a lifestyle to be embraced. They maintain their appeal not through any single quality or achievement, but through their commitment to ongoing growth, learning, and evolution as human beings. The psychology of continuous growth reveals why this approach is so fundamentally attractive. Humans are naturally drawn to people who are expanding, evolving, and becoming more capable over time. There's something inherently magnetic about someone who is actively engaged in the process of self-improvement and life enhancement. Continuous growth also prevents the staleness and predictability that can undermine long-term attractiveness. When you're constantly learning new things, developing new skills, and exploring new aspects of yourself and the world, you remain interesting and dynamic. There's always something new to discover about you, which keeps relationships fresh and engaging. The foundation of sustainable attractiveness is what researchers call intrinsic motivation, the drive to grow and develop that comes from internal satisfaction rather than external rewards or validation. People who are intrinsically motivated to improve maintain their development efforts even when no one is watching or rewarding them, because the process itself is fulfilling and meaningful. Developing intrinsic motivation for growth requires connecting your development efforts to your deeper values and long-term vision for your life. When you see personal growth as an expression of your commitment to becoming your best self, rather than as a way to gain approval or achieve specific outcomes, you're more likely to maintain your efforts consistently over time. The practice of continuous learning is fundamental to maintaining long-term attractiveness. This doesn't necessarily mean formal education, although that can be valuable. It means maintaining curiosity about the world and your place in it, seeking out new experiences and perspectives, and remaining open to changing your mind when you encounter better information or ideas. Continuous learners are attractive because they're mentally alive and engaged with the world around them. They have interesting things to discuss, fresh perspectives to share, and the intellectual humility to admit when they don't know something and want to learn more. Physical health and fitness deserve special attention because they affect every other dimension of your attractiveness and life satisfaction. Maintaining physical vitality requires ongoing commitment to exercise, nutrition, sleep, and stress management. This isn't about achieving perfect physical appearance, but about maintaining the energy, confidence, and presence that come from feeling physically capable and healthy. Emotional and psychological development is equally important for sustained attractiveness. This includes developing greater self-awareness, emotional regulation skills, empathy, resilience, and the ability to form deeper and more meaningful relationships. These internal qualities create the foundation for all external expressions of attractiveness. Ongoing emotional development might involve therapy, meditation, journaling, reading psychology and personal development books, seeking feedback from trusted friends, or working with coaches or mentors. Creative expression and skill development also contribute significantly to long-term attractiveness. Having creative outlets and areas of developing expertise makes you more interesting and gives you sources of satisfaction and confidence that don't depend on other people's approval or validation. Whether it's music, art, writing, cooking, gardening, craftsmanship, or any other creative pursuit, having areas where you're developing mastery creates depth and richness in your personality. The practice of regular self-reflection is crucial for maintaining growth momentum. This involves regularly assessing where you are in different areas of your life, what's working well, what needs improvement, and what new areas you want to explore. Without this reflection, it's easy to coast on past achievements without continuing to push yourself forward. Self-reflection might involve weekly or monthly check-ins with yourself, annual goal setting and review processes, seeking feedback from trusted friends or mentors, or working with professionals who can provide objective perspectives on your development. Setting progressive challenges for yourself ensures that you don't become complacent or stop pushing your boundaries. This means regularly setting goals that require you to stretch beyond your current capabilities, whether in professional, personal, creative, or physical domains. Nothing tests your attractiveness and social intelligence like how you handle rejection, criticism, and social setbacks. These challenging experiences are inevitable dimensions of life, and your response to them either enhances or undermines your appeal to others. People who can navigate these difficulties with grace, learn from them constructively, and maintain their confidence and warmth despite setbacks, are incredibly attractive because they demonstrate emotional maturity and resilience. The psychology of rejection reveals why it affects people so powerfully and why learning to handle it well is so important for maintaining attractiveness. From an evolutionary perspective, social rejection was literally life-threatening for our ancestors because survival depended on remaining part of the group. Our brains still process rejection as a threat to survival, which explains why it can feel so devastatingly painful. However, in modern life, most social rejection is not actually threatening to your survival or well-being. Learning to differentiate between the emotional intensity of rejection and its actual significance allows you to respond more proportionally and maintain your emotional equilibrium when facing social disappointments. The most attractive people understand that rejection often has little to do with their inherent worth or attractiveness, and much more to do with compatibility, timing, circumstances, and the other person's current needs and preferences. This perspective allows them to take rejection personally without taking it as a judgment of their fundamental value as a person. Developing this healthy perspective requires understanding that attraction and compatibility are highly subjective and contextual. Someone might reject you not because you're unattractive or unworthy, but because you're not what they're seeking at this particular time, because you remind them of someone who hurt them, because they're dealing with personal issues that make relationships difficult, or simply because there's no chemistry despite your individual qualities. This understanding allows you to maintain compassion for both yourself and the other person when rejection occurs. The skill of handling criticism gracefully is equally important for maintaining attractiveness and continuing to grow. Criticism, whether constructive or not, tends to trigger defensive responses that can make you less attractive and prevent you from learning valuable information about yourself and your impact on others. Attractive people have learned to receive criticism with curiosity rather than defensiveness. They listen to understand what truth might be present in the feedback, even if it's delivered poorly or with negative intentions. They separate the useful information from the emotional charge and use criticism as data for self-improvement rather than evidence of personal attack. This doesn't mean accepting all criticism as valid or allowing others to treat you disrespectfully. It means developing the emotional regulation skills to hear feedback without immediately becoming reactive, and the discernment to evaluate whether criticism contains useful information for your growth. The practice of extracting value from negative feedback requires asking yourself questions like, is there any truth in this criticism that I can learn from? What might I be doing that's creating this response in others? How can I use this information to improve? What does this reveal about this person's values or preferences? This learning orientation toward criticism makes you more attractive because it demonstrates intellectual humility, emotional maturity, and commitment to growth. People are drawn to those who can handle feedback well because it signals that you're safe to be honest with and that relationships with you will involve mutual growth rather than defensive interactions. Social setbacks, such as embarrassing moments, social mistakes, or conflicts with others, provide opportunities to demonstrate resilience and grace under pressure. Everyone experiences these situations, but how you handle them significantly affects how others perceive you and whether they want to continue interacting with you. The most attractive response to social setbacks involves acknowledging what happened without dramatizing it, taking appropriate responsibility without excessive self-blame, learning from the experience without becoming paralyzed by it, and moving forward with confidence intact. This might involve offering a genuine apology when appropriate, using appropriate humor to diffuse tension, or simply acknowledging a mistake and moving on without making it the center of attention. The key is responding proportionally rather than either minimizing serious issues or catastrophizing minor mistakes. Developing resilience requires building what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to see situations from multiple perspectives and find constructive meanings even in difficult experiences. Instead of interpreting setbacks as evidence of personal failure or social inadequacy, resilient people view them as learning opportunities, character-building experiences, or simply part of the normal challenges of human interaction. This cognitive flexibility allows you to maintain hope and motivation even when things don't unfold as planned. You can experience disappointment without becoming discouraged, face criticism without becoming defensive, and encounter rejection without losing confidence in your worth and attractiveness. The practice of self-compassion is fundamental to handling social difficulties gracefully. This involves treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer a good friend going through similar challenges. Instead of harsh self-criticism when things go wrong, self-compassion involves acknowledging that difficulties are part of the human experience and that you deserve kindness, especially from yourself. Maintaining perspective during difficult social experiences requires remembering that most social interactions and relationships are part of larger patterns rather than isolated events. One rejection doesn't mean you're universally unattractive. One criticism doesn't mean you're fundamentally flawed. One social mistake doesn't mean you're socially incompetent. This broader perspective allows you to maintain confidence and motivation even when individual interactions don't go well. You can view setbacks as temporary experiences rather than permanent judgments, which allows you to continue taking social risks and pursuing connections without being paralyzed by fear of negative outcomes. The ability to recover quickly from social difficulties is incredibly attractive because it signals emotional resilience and stability. People want to be around those who won't be devastated by normal life challenges, who can handle conflict and disappointment without becoming dramatic or dysfunctional, and who will remain positive and engaging even when things get difficult. At this point in the journey, Elite Success Audiobooks wants you to do something. If handling criticism, rejection, and setbacks from a grounded, learning-focused place, rather than from defensiveness or shame, feels like a different way of moving through the world from how you've been living, leave 77 in the comments. In quantum field theory and ancient numerology alike, 77 is associated with spiritual intelligence activating, with the part of you that observes before it reacts beginning to take the lead. If you felt something unlock in this section around resilience and self-compassion, 77 is your signal. Drop it below. The highest level of social attractiveness is becoming someone that others actively seek out, not just tolerate or occasionally enjoy spending time with, but someone whose company is genuinely valued and desired. These socially magnetic individuals have developed a combination of qualities that make others feel better about themselves and more alive when they're around them. Understanding and developing these qualities can transform you from someone who struggles for social acceptance to someone others compete to spend time with. The foundation of social magnetism is what psychologists call positive emotional contagion. Emotions are literally contagious, transmitted through mirror neurons and unconscious mimicry. When you're around someone who consistently embodies positive, stable, engaging energy, you unconsciously begin to feel more positive, stable, and engaged yourself. Socially magnetic people have learned to maintain emotional states that others find uplifting and energizing. This doesn't mean being artificially positive or denying negative emotions. It means developing emotional regulation skills that allow you to process difficulties privately and show up in social situations from a place of genuine well-being and positive energy. This positive emotional presence is attractive because it offers others a break from the stress, anxiety, and negativity that many people carry. When someone encounters a person who consistently radiates calm, confidence, genuine warmth, and life energy, they naturally want more of that experience in their lives. The development of positive emotional presence requires working on your internal state through practices like regular exercise, stress management, meaningful work, healthy relationships, and activities that bring you genuine joy and satisfaction. You can't sustain positive energy artificially. It must emerge from actual well-being and life satisfaction. The second principle of social magnetism is what researchers call unconditional positive regard. This means approaching others with fundamental acceptance and appreciation for who they are, separate from whether they can give you anything or meet your needs. People are magnetically drawn to those who make them feel accepted and valued without conditions or judgment. This doesn't mean having no standards or boundaries. It means recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of others while maintaining healthy expectations for how you want to be treated. Unconditional positive regard expresses itself through genuine interest in others, non-judgmental listening, and the ability to see and acknowledge people's strengths and potential. When others feel truly seen and appreciated by you, they naturally want to spend more time in your presence because the experience feels validating and life-giving. The third principle is what we might call social generosity. This involves looking for ways to add value to others' lives through your presence, skills, knowledge, connections, or support. Socially magnetic people are perpetually thinking about how they can be helpful, encouraging, or enriching to the people around them. Social generosity might involve sharing useful information, making helpful introductions, offering emotional support during difficult times, celebrating others' successes, or simply bringing positive energy and interesting conversation to social interactions. The key is giving without keeping score or expecting immediate returns. This generosity creates positive cycles where your investment in others' well-being motivates them to invest in yours, leading to deepening relationships and expanding social networks. The fourth principle is intellectual and emotional stimulation. Magnetic people are interesting to be around because they bring fresh perspectives, ask thought-provoking questions, share fascinating experiences, and engage with life in ways that inspire others to think and feel more deeply. This doesn't require being extraordinary or having exceptional experiences. It requires maintaining curiosity about life, continuing to learn and grow, and being willing to explore ideas and experiences that expand your understanding of yourself and the world. Intellectually stimulating. People read broadly, pursue diverse interests, travel when possible, engage with different types of people, and maintain active engagement with whatever subjects genuinely fascinate them. This creates a depth of knowledge and perspective that makes conversations with them enriching and memorable. The fifth principle is what researchers call social leadership, which doesn't necessarily mean formal authority, but rather the ability to positively influence group dynamics and help social situations become more enjoyable and meaningful for everyone involved. Social leaders might initiate conversations, suggest activities, introduce people to each other, diffuse tension, or simply model the kind of energy and engagement they want to see in the group. They take responsibility for contributing to positive group experiences rather than just passively participating. This leadership emerges naturally when you combine genuine care for others' well-being with the confidence to take initiative and the social skills to guide interactions in positive directions. The sixth principle is authenticity and emotional transparency. While this might seem contradictory to maintaining positive energy, the most magnetic people have learned to be genuinely themselves, including appropriate sharing of their struggles, uncertainties, and growth areas. This authenticity is attractive because it gives others permission to be real as well, rather than maintaining exhausting social facades. The journey from trying to be attractive to naturally being attractive represents a fundamental transformation in how you relate to yourself and others. The goal is not to add attractive behaviors to an unchanged personality, but to become a person whose natural way of being in the world is inherently magnetic. This transformation happens when the principles we've explored become so integrated into your identity that they express themselves automatically without conscious effort. True mastery of silent attraction occurs when you stop thinking about being attractive and start simply being attractive. This happens when your internal development reaches a point where confidence, emotional stability, social intelligence, and genuine care for others emerge naturally from who you are, rather than what you're attempting to do. Attractiveness is not a collection of separate skills, but an emergent property of psychological and emotional development. The foundation of this integration is authentic self-expression. This means developing such a clear sense of who you are, what you value, and what you stand for, that you can express yourself genuinely in any situation without losing your center or compromising your integrity. Authentic self-expression requires extensive self-knowledge, understanding your strengths and weaknesses, values and priorities, natural communication style, and genuine interests and passions. When you know yourself deeply, you can be yourself consistently, creating the coherence and authenticity that others find magnetic. This authenticity is attractive because it's rare. When others encounter someone who is genuinely themselves, regardless of social context, it's both refreshing and inspiring. It gives others permission to be more authentic as well. Developing authentic self-expression requires courage to be yourself, even when it's not popular or immediately rewarded. Express your genuine thoughts respectfully. Pursue your real interests rather than what you think will impress others. And make decisions based on your values rather than social pressure. The integration process involves effortless excellence, developing the skills we've discussed to such a level that they become automatic expressions of who you are, rather than conscious techniques you remember to apply. Effortless excellence develops through deliberate practice, consistently working on skills just beyond your comfort zone, with full attention and intention to improve. Over time, advanced skills become natural and automatic, allowing you to focus on even higher levels of development. This means practicing emotional regulation until maintaining calm confidence becomes your natural state. Developing social intelligence until reading group dynamics and responding appropriately becomes instinctive. The goal is natural competence that allows you to navigate life's challenges with grace and effectiveness while remaining genuinely yourself. The transformation also involves shifting from external validation to internal satisfaction as your primary source of self-worth. When your sense of value comes from your own assessment of your growth, contribution, and authenticity, rather than others' approval, you become more attractive because you're not needy or desperate for validation. This internal orientation allows you to engage with others from abundance rather than scarcity. You can be genuinely interested in others because you're not constantly worried about whether they like you. You can express yourself authentically because you don't need their approval to feel good about yourself. This shift requires developing intrinsic motivation, where your drive to grow comes from internal satisfaction rather than external rewards. When you're motivated by the joy of learning, the satisfaction of contributing, and the fulfillment of expressing your authentic self, you become naturally attractive because your energy is positive and self-generated. The mastery of silent attraction involves understanding that true attractiveness is about service to others rather than personal gain. When you develop yourself to contribute more effectively to others' well-being and happiness, attractiveness emerges as a natural byproduct of your positive impact. This service orientation doesn't mean self-sacrifice or people-pleasing. Develop yourself to be genuinely helpful, supportive, and enriching to others' lives. When people feel better about themselves and more alive when they're around you, they naturally want more of your presence. This contribution-focused approach ensures your growth benefits not only yourself, but everyone you interact with, creating positive cycles that enhance every area of your life. You become attractive not because you're trying to be, but because you're genuinely making others' lives better through your presence, skills, and attention. The final dimension of integration involves understanding that this transformation is ongoing rather than completed. Authentic self-development is a lifelong process of growth, learning, and evolution. The most attractive people understand that they're always becoming, rather than already finished. This growth orientation keeps you interesting and dynamic throughout your life. There's always something new to discover about you, new depths to explore, new skills being developed. This continued evolution prevents stagnation and keeps you engaged with life in ways that inspire others. The integration of authentic self-expression, effortless excellence, internal validation, service orientation, and commitment to ongoing growth creates a way of being that is inherently and sustainably attractive. You become someone others naturally want to be around, not because you're performing attractiveness, but because you're genuinely living in ways that create positive experiences for everyone involved. This transformation represents the ultimate goal of personal development, becoming a person whose natural way of being creates value for yourself and others while expressing your authentic potential. When you reach this level of integration, attractiveness becomes not something you do, but something you are, emerging naturally from the depth of your character and the quality of your presence in the world. And to close this experience, Elite Success Audiobooks has one final invitation for you. If this audiobook has moved something in you, if you're leaving this with a different understanding of what real attraction means and where it genuinely comes from, leave 369 in the comments. Nikola Tesla called 3, 6, and 9 the key to the universe. In the language of energy and quantum patterning, 369 represents the creative sequence, thought, amplification, and manifestation. You've absorbed the thought. This community amplifies it. Now you carry it into the world and let it manifest through how you show up. Drop 369 below if you're ready. Let this community witness the moment you chose to become. There is a moment, and if you've been honest with yourself while listening to everything that came before this, you already know exactly which moment I'm talking about. It's the moment you caught yourself performing, not living, performing. The moment you realized that the smile you wore into a room was calculated rather than genuine. That the confidence you projected was a costume rather than a conviction. That the version of yourself you presented to the world was edited, filtered, and shaped around what you believed others needed to see, rather than who you actually were underneath all of it. Most people live their entire lives inside that gap, the space between who they genuinely are and who they think they need to be in order to be accepted, valued, and desired. And here's what that gap costs you. It costs you energy you don't have to spare. It costs you the relationships that could have been real but stayed surface. It costs you the version of yourself that was always capable of more, always deeper, always more compelling, but was never fully permitted to arrive. This final section is not about technique. It's not about another framework to memorize or another behavioral pattern to rehearse. This is about something far more essential. This is about the decision, the actual, conscious, irreversible decision to stop being a draft of yourself and become the finished version. Not perfect, not complete in the sense that growth ends, but complete in the sense that you are no longer waiting for external permission to fully inhabit who you are. Silent attraction at its deepest level is not a social skill. It is a state of being, and that state of being is available to you right now. Not after you've fixed everything, not after the circumstances improve, not after you've resolved every internal conflict, but right now, as you are, choosing to move differently from this moment forward. Think about the people in your life who possess that quality you've been trying to name for years. The ones who walk into spaces and shift them without announcing it. The ones you find yourself gravitating toward at gatherings without quite understanding why. The ones whose words land with weight because they don't overuse them. The ones who seem entirely unbothered by the social games that exhaust everyone else. If you look closely enough at those people, what you'll notice is not that they were born different. What you'll notice is that at some point, sometimes consciously, sometimes through enough pain that they had no other choice, they stopped outsourcing their sense of worth. They stopped letting the room decide how they felt about themselves. They stopped making their internal state dependent on external variables they couldn't control. And in doing so, they became the variable that others couldn't control. They became the constant in an environment of chaos, the calm in the noise, the presence that other people reached for, because being near it made them feel more like themselves. That is what you are building. Not a technique, not a performance, a self. And the building of that self is the most courageous, the most counterintuitive, and ultimately the most magnetic thing a human being can do in a world that profits enormously from your insecurity. Here is what nobody tells you about the decision to become authentically attractive. It will feel like loss before it feels like freedom. When you stop performing, there will be people who notice. There will be rooms where the version of you they expected doesn't show up, and they won't know what to do with what arrived instead. There will be relationships that relied on your compliance, your eagerness to please, your willingness to shrink. And when you stop complying, stop shrinking, stop performing smallness to make others comfortable, some of those relationships will struggle. Some will end. And in those early moments, your nervous system will interpret this as evidence that you made the wrong choice. It will present the discomfort of authenticity as proof that the old way was safer. Do not believe it. What you're experiencing in those moments is not failure. It is filtration. The people who fall away when you become more genuinely yourself were never able to meet the real you anyway. And the space that opens when they leave is exactly the space that the right people, the ones who can handle your full presence, who are energized by your genuine self, who are capable of real connection, will step into. This is one of the deepest truths about social magnetism that almost never gets discussed. True attractiveness is not about drawing everyone in. It is about drawing the right ones in and having the confidence to let the wrong ones go without abandoning yourself in the process. The most magnetically attractive people you'll ever encounter are not universally liked. They are deeply and genuinely valued by those who matter. They don't try to appeal to every person in every room. They show up fully and let that fullness do the selecting. And because they are not performing, not editing, not shrinking, What people encounter is real, and real is rare. Real is what people are starving for. Real is what makes someone unforgettable. Now let's talk about what that actually requires from you day by day, because the gap between understanding this and living it is where most people get stuck. Understanding silent magnetism is available to anyone with enough curiosity to pursue it. Living it, consistently, under pressure, in the moments when every old habit is pulling you back toward performance and approval seeking, that requires something more deliberate. It requires what we might call identity-level practice. This is distinct from behavioral practice. Behavioral practice says, I will try to make more eye contact. I will try to speak more slowly. I will try to listen better. Identity-level practice says, I am the kind of person who is fully present. I am the kind of person whose confidence comes from within. I am the kind of person who adds genuine value to every room I enter. The difference is not semantic. The difference is everything. Because behaviors adopted without identity change are fragile. They crack under pressure. They collapse when you're tired, when you're stressed, when you're with people who trigger your oldest insecurities. But behaviors that emerge from identity are resilient. They persist because they are not something you're doing. They are expressions of who you are. Building identity-level change requires repetition of a particular kind, not the repetition of forcing yourself through uncomfortable behaviors and gritting your teeth until they feel natural. The repetition that builds identity is the repetition of small, consistent choices that vote for the person you are becoming. Every time you choose to pause before responding rather than reacting, you cast a vote for emotional regulation as part of your identity. Every time you genuinely listen to someone rather than waiting for your turn to speak, you cast a vote for deep presence as part of your identity. Every time you allow a silence to breathe rather than filling it with performance, you cast a vote for confidence as part of your identity. None of these individual votes seem monumental, but accumulate enough of them and the identity shifts. Not because you forced it, because you earned it through the unglamorous, consistent, daily practice of choosing who you want to be, even when it's difficult. There is a version of you that already exists in potential, fully present, genuinely confident, emotionally regulated, deeply curious about others, comfortable in silence, grounded under pressure, giving without keeping score, growing without requiring an audience. That version of you is not a fantasy. It is not reserved for people with different backgrounds or better circumstances or more favorable starting points. It is the direction your consistent choices are either moving you toward or away from every single day. And the distance between where you are now and where that And let's be specific about what this looks like in the ordinary moments. Because transformation doesn't happen in the dramatic, cinematic scenes we imagine when we think about change. It doesn't happen in the grand gesture or the single breakthrough conversation or the morning you wake up and suddenly feel different. Transformation happens in the Tuesday afternoon when you're exhausted and someone says something dismissive and every old instinct tells you to either collapse or retaliate. And instead, you breathe, you stay, You respond from your center rather than your wound. It happens in the quiet Friday evening when you could scroll through other people's lives looking for evidence of your own inadequacy. And instead, you pick up something that grows you, something that feeds the version of you that's emerging. It happens in the conversation where you feel the pull to perform, to impress, to manage how you're being perceived. And instead, you get genuinely curious about the person in front of you and let that curiosity lead. These moments don't feel like transformation when they're happening. They feel small. They feel almost unremarkable. But they are the actual substance of the person you are becoming. Every single one of them. There is something else worth saying directly. The world does not make it easy to become this person. The systems around you, social media algorithms, comparison culture, the constant noise of other people's opinions about who you should be and how you should present yourself. None of it is designed to help you develop authentic presence. All of it profits from the gap between who you are and who you think you need to be. The anxiety in that gap is worth billions of dollars to industries built on selling you the solution to insecurities they helped create. Understanding this is not about cynicism. It's about clarity. When you see the machinery clearly, you can choose not to be fed through it. You can make the countercultural decision to invest in your actual self rather than your projected image, to build competence rather than appearance, to develop depth rather than surface. And in doing so, you opt out of a system that needed you to stay small, and you opt into the only system that has ever actually worked. The system of genuine, sustained, inner-directed growth. The people who change rooms when they walk into them, who make others feel seen without trying, who carry calm like a quiet force, who are remembered long after the conversation ends. They made that choice, quietly, repeatedly, without applause. They chose themselves, not out of selfishness, but out of the deepest form of responsibility. The responsibility to become someone whose presence is a contribution rather than a demand. Someone whose confidence is a resource others can draw from rather than a performance others must manage around. Someone whose growth makes the people nearby believe that their own growth is possible too. That is the legacy of silent attraction. Not the admiration you receive, but the permission you give others simply by becoming who you are, without apology, without performance, without waiting for the world to tell you it's safe. It was never going to be safe. It was always going to require courage. And you are still here, still listening, still choosing. That already tells you something important about who you are, and about who you are still becoming.